Imagine finding out the father of your children isn't who you believed. It's a truth so unbelievable, it still doesn't feel real to me. I've lived with this secret for so long, I'm not even sure I fully understand it myself. My mind has been racing, trying to piece together the fragments of a life that's been turned upside down. To those who may be listening, I want to ask, tell me the time and country you're watching from. You might be thinking, how could this happen to her? But for me, it's just the beginning of a story that I'm still trying to make sense of. To understand how I ended up here, we need to rewind. I grew up in a household where my father was the center of attention. He was charming, charismatic, and had a way of making everyone believe he was the best thing since sliced bread. But looking back now, I can see the cracks in the facade. The way he'd become distant when he got angry, the way my mother would cower in fear. It was a toxic environment, and I was just a kid trying to navigate the chaos. I remember the countless times I'd try to talk to my mother about my father's behavior, only to be met with a dismissive shrug or a change of subject. It was as if she was afraid to confront the reality of our situation. And I get it. She was trapped in her own way, just like I was. But for a kid, it's hard to understand why the person who's supposed to protect you is the one causing you the most harm. As I grew older, I began to realize that my father's behavior wasn't just limited to his interactions with my mother. He had a way of manipulating me, of making me feel like I was the one who was crazy. He'd make me doubt my own sanity, my own memories. It was a game of cat and mouse, and I was just a pawn. I remember feeling like I was walking on eggshells, never knowing when he'd blow up next. It was a constant state of fear, and it's something that I'm still trying to shake off to this day. But even in the midst of all this chaos, there were moments of respite. Moments when I'd find solace in a book, or a friend, or a quiet moment to myself. It was like a tiny glimmer of hope in an otherwise dark world. I remember feeling like I was getting stronger, like I was learning to stand up for myself. But it was all just a facade. My father's control was too deep-seated, and I was too scared to break free. That's when he met her. My boyfriend, who would eventually become the father of my children. He was different from my father in every way. He was kind, gentle, and genuine. He made me feel seen, heard, and loved in a way that I'd never experienced before. And I thought, finally, I'm free. But the truth is, I was just trading one prison for another. Or so I'd later find out. When I found out I was pregnant, I was over the moon. I'd never felt so happy, so scared, and so vulnerable all at once. My boyfriend was amazing, supportive, and loving. He was everything my father was not. But as the pregnancy progressed, I started to notice strange comments from my father. Comments that seemed innocent at first, but eventually became too frequent, too pointed. And I started to feel that familiar fear rising up inside me. It was then that I decided to take a DNA test. Not because I suspected anything, but because I wanted to know for sure. Who am I? Where do I come from? What's my story? And that's when it hit me. The results were inconclusive, but the implications were clear. My father was not who I thought he was. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut, like my whole world had been turned upside down. And the worst part? I didn't know how to tell my boyfriend. The conversation with him was like a punch to the face. I felt ashamed, guilty, and scared. I was worried about losing him, about him leaving me because of my father's secrets. But he surprised me. He was understanding, compassionate, and loving. He told me that he didn't care about my father's past, that he only cared about me, about us. And in that moment, I knew that I had found my true home. It's been a long time since I felt like I'm living my truth, like I'm not just pretending to be someone I'm not. My story's not over yet, but I'm finally starting to see a light at the end of the tunnel. I'm learning to heal, to forgive, and to move on. And if you're listening to this, I want you to know that you're not alone. We're all struggling with something, and it's okay to admit it. So if any part of this story felt familiar to you, please know that you're not alone. And if you want more real stories like this, stick around. We're just getting started. To understand how I ended up here, we need to rewind. Growing up, my childhood felt like a dream, one that I'm not even sure I really lived. It's a strange feeling, like I'm stuck in a perpetual state of limbo. But that's what it's like when you learn the unthinkable secret about your family. Imagine finding out the father of your children isn't who you believed. It's a truth so unbelievable, it still doesn't feel real to me. I've lived with this secret for so long, I'm not even sure how to explain it. But to grasp the complexity of this situation, let's go back to my childhood. My early years were marked by an eerie sense of normalcy, the kind where you don't know something is off until much later. Looking back now, I can't believe I thought that was normal. My parents were always around, but they were more like specters than real people. I never felt like I could connect with them on a deeper level. As a child, you often normalize situations you don't understand. You assume that's just how things are, and you move on. But that's precisely the problem. We tend to accept the unacceptable as our reality. And that's exactly what happened in my childhood. You see, my mother and I were extremely close, almost too close. It's funny how we often romanticize relationships, but looking back, I realized that my bond with her was suffocating. She was controlling, always dictating what I could and couldn't do. I felt trapped, like I was living in a cage with no way out. It was only when I started to break free that I realized the extent of her control. I'd make small rebellions, like making a new friend or reading a book that wasn't on her approved list. But those moments of defiance were short-lived, and soon I'd be back to my old self, cowering in fear. That's when I started to feel like I was living in a trap that was slowly closing in on me. And that's where the real trap started forming. I didn't know it then, but I was about to learn the most important lesson of my life. Fear is a powerful tool that can control your every move. You see, fear has a way of shaping our habits. I used to whisper to myself in the dead of night, fearing that if I made a sound, my mother would come and punish me. I learned to avoid eye contact, shrunk in my own home, and became a master of hiding my true self. It was a strange existence, one where I was always walking on eggshells, never knowing when the other shoe would drop. But the most damaging part wasn't what she did. It was what she convinced me to believe. That I was worthless, that I'd never amount to anything. And that's a lesson that I'm still trying to shake off to this day. As I navigated my childhood, I tried to escape mentally before physically. I'd imagine running away, starting a new life somewhere far, far away. But those fantasies were short-lived, and soon I'd be back to my old self, trapped in this never-ending cycle of fear and shame. It wasn't until someone new entered my life that everything changed. His name was Jake, and he was kind, gentle, and genuinely caring. For the first time in my life, I felt like I could be myself around him, like I didn't have to hide my true self. And that's when the real journey began. A journey that would take me down a path of discovery, healing, and ultimately, self-acceptance. But it's a journey that I'm still on, and one that I'm not sure I'll ever truly complete. I've been living with a secret for so long, it still felt like a dream. A nightmare that I couldn't wake up from. The father of my children, a man I'd trusted, a man I'd loved, wasn't who I thought he was. It's a truth that's hard to accept even now. Imagine finding out the father of your children isn't who you believed. It's a truth so unbelievable, it feels like a punch to the gut. I've lived with this secret for so long, I'm not even sure I remember what it's like to feel normal. But that's what it's like when you learn that the person you trusted most in the world has been lying to you. As I look back, I realize the control began when I was still a child. My father's words were like a slow-moving fog, seeping into every corner of my mind. He'd whisper things in my ear, making me feel like I was the only one who understood him. And I believed him, because kids often normalize situations they don't understand. They think that's just how life is. Looking back now, I can see the trap forming. It started with small things, his anger, his manipulation, his control. He'd make me feel like I was the one who was crazy, like I was the one who was broken. And I believed him, because that's what he wanted me to believe. The power imbalance was suffocating. I felt like I was living in a perpetual state of fear, like I was walking on eggshells around him. I'd whisper to myself, avoiding eye contact, shrinking in my own home. Maybe you know that feeling. When someone's anger controls your every move, it's a feeling that's hard to shake, even when you're an adult. But the most damaging part wasn't what he did. It was what he convinced me to believe. That I was flawed, that I was broken, that I was worthless. And that's a lie that I carried with me for a long time. As I grew older, I started to realize that I didn't have to live like that. I started to rebel against the control, in small ways at first. I made a friend, read a book, stepped outside the boundaries he'd set for me. And for a moment, I felt like I was free. But that feeling was short-lived, because the control was always there, lurking in the shadows. It wasn't until I met my boyfriend that I started to feel like I was truly living. He was kind, he was compassionate, he was safe. And for the first time in my life, I felt like I was normal. But even that felt scary, because it meant that I was leaving behind the only life I'd ever known. When I found out I was pregnant, I felt a mix of emotions. I was excited, I was scared, I was hopeful. But as the baby grew inside me, I started to feel a familiar fear rising to the surface. It was a fear that I thought I'd left behind, but it was still there, lurking in the shadows. And then the DNA test results changed everything. I felt like my whole world had been turned upside down. How could my past exist inside my future? It didn't make sense. It didn't feel real. But it was real, and it changed everything. As I navigated this new reality, I realized that I had a choice to make. I could let the past define me, or I could use it as an opportunity to heal. And that's what I've been doing ever since. Slowly, messily, non-linearly. It's not always easy, but it's worth it. Because I'm learning that my past doesn't get to write my ending. I get to choose how my story ends. And that's a powerful feeling. A new hope. I still can't believe it's been a year since I met Alex. He's been my rock, my safe haven, my person. Being with him has been like waking up from a dream, one that I thought was never going to end. For so long, my childhood felt like a perpetual state of limbo, like I was stuck in a never-ending nightmare. But Alex, he's the real deal. He's kind, gentle, and understanding in ways that I never thought possible. At first, it was hard for me to let go of the control. I've been living with the secret for so long that it felt like a part of me. But being with Alex has been like a breath of fresh air. It's like my entire world has opened up. I feel like I can finally be myself, without the weight of my past holding me back. It's an incredible feeling, but it's also confusing. Sometimes I find myself wondering if I'm really ready for this, if I'm truly free from the chains of my past. The thought of it is both exhilarating and terrifying. What if I'm not good enough? What if I make mistakes? What if? But Alex is patient. He knows that I'm not ready to let go yet. He knows that I need time to heal, to figure out who I am without the control. And he's giving me that time. He's giving me space to breathe, to think, to feel. It's a beautiful thing, but it's also unsettling, because for the first time in my life, I'm facing the music. I'm facing the reality of my past. And it's not pretty. It's messy, complicated, and painful. But it's also liberating. Because I'm finally seeing that I don't have to be defined by my past. I don't have to be controlled by the secrets that I've kept for so long. But as I look to the future, I'm also aware of the past. I know that it's not just about me. I know that there are others who have been affected by my father's actions, and I'm not sure how to process that. I'm not sure how to deal with the guilt, the shame, the fear of not being good enough. And that's where we are now, right on the cusp of something new, something unknown. I'm not sure what the future holds, but I do know one thing. I'm ready to face it head on. I'm ready to take control of my life, to make my own choices, to live my own truth. But it's not going to be easy. It's going to be messy, complicated, and painful. And I'm not sure if I'm ready for that. I'm not sure if I'm ready to confront the shadows of my past, to face the demons. Here's the script content for Section 7, a false sense of normal, which should be approximately 320 words. I still remember the moment I found out I was pregnant. It was like a dream come true, a new chapter unfolding before me. I felt a mix of emotions, excitement, nervousness, and a deep sense of hope. I thought I'd finally left my old life behind, and this baby was a fresh start. I envisioned a future filled with love, laughter, and happiness. As I started to show, people would comment on how peaceful I looked. They'd say things like, "You're glowing," or "You're so serene." But what they didn't see was the fear creeping up on me at night, the familiar feelings of unease that lingered in the shadows. It was as if my past had followed me into this new chapter, whispering doubts and uncertainty in my ear. I tried to brush it off, to convince myself that I'd left all that behind. But the truth was, I had no idea what I was getting myself into. I thought I'd found a way to escape, to create a new normal. But the more I tried to fit into this new role, the more I realized that I was still carrying the weight of my past. It wasn't until I looked at my baby bump that I felt a pang of unease. Why was I feeling this way? I thought I'd left my old life behind, but now it seemed like it was still with me, a constant reminder of what I'd been through. I started to wonder if I was truly ready for this new chapter, or if I was just pretending to be someone I wasn't. As I stood there, staring at my belly, I felt a sense of trepidation. What if I wasn't enough? What if I couldn't provide the life my baby deserved? The questions swirled in my head like a tornado, leaving me feeling lost and uncertain. And that's when it hit me, the DNA test. I had to confront the truth about my past and my present. But was I ready for what I might find out? I still remember the day I took the DNA test. It was as if I was waiting for a verdict on a death row sentence. My hands were shaking, my heart was racing, and my mind was flooded with worst-case scenarios. I had been pregnant for a few months, and the thought of my children having their father's DNA was both thrilling and terrifying. I had always known that my father was not a good person, but I had never imagined that his darkness could seep into my own family. The idea that my babies could inherit his traits, his flaws, his demons, it was a prospect that filled me with anxiety and dread. As I waited for the results, I couldn't help but think about my childhood. The memories of my father's abuse, the emotional manipulation, the fear that gripped me every time he raised his voice. I thought about how I had tried to escape, how I had pretended to be okay, how I had normalized the abnormal. But now, with this DNA test, I was faced with a harsh reality. I was not just a survivor. I was a product of my father's abuse. I was a carrier of his DNA, a testament to his power and control. The thought was both terrifying and liberating. And then, the results arrived. I remember feeling like I was in a dream, like I was floating above my body, watching myself react to the news. My heart sank, my stomach dropped, and my mind went blank. How could this be? How could my past exist inside my future? I didn't know how to process the information, how to make sense of it all. But as I looked at the results, I knew one thing for sure. I had to tell my boyfriend. I had to confront the reality of my father's DNA and face the fear that had been lurking inside me for so long. But that's a story for another time. I remember the conversation with my boyfriend like it was yesterday. It was a turning point in our relationship, one that would change the way we navigated our future together. I had just received the DNA test results, and the weight of the truth was crushing me. My boyfriend, sensing my turmoil, took my hands in his and asked if everything was okay. I hesitated, unsure of how to break the news. The words felt like a poison in my mouth, but I knew I had to be honest. I took a deep breath and began to tell him everything. The abuse, the fear, the shame. The words tumbled out of me like a dam breaking, and I felt a weight lift off my shoulders as I spoke. As I spoke, I saw a mix of emotions on his face: shock, sadness, compassion. But what struck me was the way he looked at me, like he saw me for the first time. It was as if he had been walking alongside me, blindfolded, and suddenly the blindfold was lifted. He saw the scars, the wounds, the pain, and yet he didn't turn away. In that moment, I felt a sense of vulnerability, of trust, that I had never felt with anyone before. It was as if we had reached a new level of intimacy, one that transcended words and went straight to the heart. My boyfriend held me close, and I felt a sense of peace wash over me. It was like I had finally found a safe haven, a place where I could be myself without fear of judgment. But even as I felt this sense of peace, I knew that our journey was far from over. As I reflect on the journey that brought me to this place, I'm struck by the resilience that's allowed me to survive, to heal, and to find a way forward. It's funny, when I think back on the early days, when the weight of my father's secret was crushing me, I wonder how I didn't shatter under the pressure. But somehow I found a way to keep moving, to adapt, and to grow. And with each step, I began to realize that I wasn't just rebuilding my life. I was breaking free from the cycle that had held me captive for so long. I remember the countless moments when it felt like the world was spinning out of control, when I was trapped in a never-ending cycle of fear and uncertainty. But I also remember the moments of beauty, of hope, and of connection, with loved ones, with strangers, and with myself. It's these moments that remind me that healing is a journey, not a destination. It's messy and it's slow, but it's worth it. And so, as I look back on the twists and turns that brought me to this place, I want to leave you with a message of hope and resilience. Your past may have been marked by pain and trauma, but it doesn't get to define your future. You have the power to break free, to heal, and to create a new story, one that's authentic, brave, and full of life.